Hi everybody, it's Claire back with another art journal video, and again I'm just sharing some pages that I've done using Dina's latest release. So I'm playing in the large craft journal. There is some clear gesso on this page as well, and then I'm just going to use some collage paper from this Flying Things collage paper pack, one of the new ones she just released. I love these little birds, so I cut away some of the excess collage paper and was going to stick it on in a whole piece, and then thought it was a bit of a funky shape, so I decided to rip it into pieces. I'm going to stick it in place using some matte medium. This is a great way to start and break up your blank page, is to just slap some collage paper down. It kind of gives you a bit of a starting point. So this page did end up going through lots of different stages. There are lots of layers on this page, and it ended up being a page that I actually fell quite in love with, although it went through some stages where I really didn't like it. That's one of the great things about art journaling, is there are so many ways that you can rescue pages that you're not keen on. So I'm going in with Carnation. This is one of Dina's new brushes that I'm using. It's the size 24 round brush. As I've said in my other videos, the bristles are so soft, they're just really lovely to paint with. So I've added some of that onto my page because there's clear gesso underneath. It's very easy to remove paint through the stencil like this. So I'm just using a wet baby wipe and removing some paint through the stencil, which is the new one called Cover Stencil. So once that was dry, I then went in with some magenta and using a blending tool, just adding a bit of that through the same stencil, overlapping some of the stenciling that I've already done on the page. And then, because I felt I wanted to push that pink away a little bit, I then went in before it was dry with a damp baby wipe and just lifted a little bit of that paint away. There was some paint left on my glass mat, so I decided I would mix them together and make a bit of a wash to paint through the stenciling and the colour that was already on the page. So it's kind of like a really pale lilac-y colour. So then I felt that this stencil would be great for printing with the gloss spray. So I got the black gloss spray, sprayed it onto the stencil, and then took a print of it on my page. And then repeated the process in a couple of other places. It gets very sticky after a while. So one thing you need to make sure is to give your stencil a good clean after you've used gloss spray, because otherwise it will just attach itself to anything while it's drying. You will end up with things on your stencil that you don't necessarily want. So then I gave it a good dry, and then I'm just outlining those lovely shapes using a thin Posca pen. So this is the Scribbly Birds in Flight stamp set. It's one of Dina's old ones, and I'm stamping this onto some printer paper, choosing 3 of the images from that stamp set just to use on my page. So I kind of decided to go with these because of the things that fly collage paper that I was using. You can't actually see a great deal of it now, but it is there in one of the layers. So then I, for some reason, decided I wanted to add some white paint into some of the little marks in this stencil, and using one of the brushes. This is the smaller brush, it's the size 16, and then just adding some splatters with that brush as well. So because it does hold quite a lot of water, it's quite good for doing splatters with. Then once that was dry, I'm then sticking my little scribbly birds in place. So they work quite well because they're stamped onto white paper, so they're contrasting against that background and the black of the stencil that I used to print. Then I'm just using a number stamp that I've got. I think it might be Stampers Anonymous one. It's quite an old one, just to add a bit of stamping onto the page too. So it's all about building up the layers here. I'm using my favourite little cardboard tube just to stamp some circles onto my page too. And then I decided I needed somewhere to do some writing. So I'm kind of doing like, almost like a movement line coming out the back of the birds. And this is where I'm going to do some writing. So I did do a couple of layers of paint there, dried it really well, and then outlined those lines using the Stabilo oil, which I also water activated. So I also went round some of the outlines of the birds just to darken those up a little bit, because they were just getting a little bit lost on that busy background. And actually this is a great way to just draw a bit more attention to your focal point. If you feel it's getting a bit lost, just crack out that Stabilo oil pencil. It's a really useful tool. So I've stuck on a quote from the ledger papers too, and then I'm using that space I've created with the white paint to write my words, and I'm using a thinner Posca pen. What is wrong with me? Can't speak. Using a smaller Posca pen to write my words. I'm just totally blaming COVID. It just gets blamed for everything these days. Can't think, can't speak. It's COVID. It must be COVID. So when I'd actually got to this point with my page, I was actually starting to think, I quite like it now. It's kind of come together. But it did go through a phase where I was like, what on earth am I doing? And sometimes that's the case. And sometimes I find that I just have to go with it. And I think the other thing that I've realised as well is if you look at the colour palette that I've used on both of these consecutive pages, I've obviously been influenced by what was on the right-hand page when I opened up my journal and started working on this page, because I've used the exact same colours. But that's okay, it doesn't matter. It means those two pages work quite cohesively together. So I then went and got one of the scribble sticks in turquoise, put a little bit of water on my glass mat and just sat the end of it in the water just to activate it, and then used it to print some little circles. So these just act as a little bit of a contrast colour against everything else that's going on the background page, because by this point I'd clocked that I'd used the same colours and it was annoying me, so I decided I wanted to add a little pop of other colour in this page. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me creating with Dina's new stencil and collage paper, and just using it with some of her old stuff as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.